Welcome to our Heritage Series where we spotlight some of Singapore's most iconic companies, those with history spanning 25 years or more, and whose contributions have shaped the nation's growth and legacy. And in today's episode, we delve into a name that deeply resonates with us at Dollars and Cents and with many retail investors across Singapore, the Securities Investor Association of Singapore, or SIAS as it's widely known. Founded in 1999 during one of the most significant financial crises between Singapore and Malaysia, SIAS has stood as a pillar of advocacy and support for minority shareholders. At the heart of this movement is our special guest for today, the founder and CEO of SIAS, Mr. David Gerald. Mr. Gerald, it's an honor to have you on the show. Welcome.
My pleasure.
And our topic today is how SIAS became Singapore's champion for minority shareholders. And to introduce the topic, I think we first have to go back to how and why SIAS started. So SIAS started in 1999, and this was about 26 years ago. And so firstly, Mr. Gerald, congratulations on your Silver Jubilee last year.
Thank you. Yes.
I saw that you have this long service award that you also got last year.
That's right.
25 years in SIAS. I mean, that's a quarter of a century.
Yes. Well, against all expectations.
But unfortunately, when SIAS actually first started 26 years ago, it wasn't exactly the most joyous of occasion. This is because SIAS started due to what is understood as a cross-border financial crisis that affected about 172,000 retail investors in Singapore. And this was because of Clob. Right, so I was a young person back then in 1999. So to help me understand this topic, I actually read this excellent book called Boardroom Knockout. This was released in 2024 to commemorate SIAS 25th anniversary. So you guys can also get it. But I got a lot of information from there, and from this book, I learned a few things. So Clob stands for those of you who are millennials or the Gen Zs among us. Clob stands for Central Limit Order Book, which was an over-the-counter platform launched in Singapore in 1990. And it was designed back then to enable Singapore investors to continue trading Malaysian stocks following the separation of the Kuala Lumpur Stock Exchange from the then called Stock Exchange of Singapore, which had delisted dual-listed stocks. So at its peak, Clob facilitated the trading of about 180 Malaysian shares and became immensely popular in the early 90s. And I was just talking to my co-founder Dinesh earlier before you came, and he was just telling me a lot of just how popular Malaysian stocks were back then in the 90s.
Yes, because it was a very speculative market, and if we wanted to gamble, and that was where we went to.
Right.
Lots of Singaporeans made. Sometimes the stock would rise 400%.
Wow. These are Malaysian companies.
Yes, not all of it, but some of it. And local investors couldn't get that here, so they crossed the causeway to make money.
All right.
They were quite happy gambling,
They were happy until the Asian financial crisis. So,
and that was sudden occurrence where, because of the Asian financial crisis, Malaysia needed to raise funds. And they were really in dire straits because their currency got dumped by Soros.
Yeah.
All right, and the stock market collapsed, and they were blaming us. If Singapore investors were ordinarily picking up a lot of stocks that go down.
So why is it our?
Yeah, so I felt that it was rather odd. The contrary was true. We were buying more, and Singaporeans were buying more, but they wanted to get some dollars out of us.
Right.
All right. So that time Dollars and Cents wasn't there.
Yeah.
But they wanted dollars. So what did they do? They come and tell us, they told us that you guys have, heated up our market has collapsed, therefore we're going to freeze the shares.
Right.
All right. This is it was atrocious to me, but it was terrible bullying, Small investors buy stocks to make money. Small investors do not go to Malaysia to cause collapse. Why would they want to burn their own fingers?
So they basically declared Clob an illegal market,
Yes.
which means the Singapore investors that were investing in Malaysian stocks through Clob suddenly had their shares essentially suspended from trading because they can't buy or sell anymore.
Yeah,
right?
they froze it.
It was still there, but it was frozen, right? So I think to the tune of about 7 billion Sing.
7.5 billion Sing.
7.5 billion Sing dollars. There was a proposed private solution. A businessman in Singapore wanted to buy all the stocks but at a discount. Right.
And the discount was a ridiculous steep discount.
50%.
So it was something that we could not agree and should not have agreed.
How did the investors back then thought about it?
A few of them, 359 of them panicked and wanted to surrender,
Oh, right.
shares. When I read in the papers that people are falling prey to this, ridiculous suggestion, I decided that leadership was needed. For 9 months, people were screaming for someone to come forward and help them. And the Malaysian government has taken a position that they will not talk to Singapore government on
Okay,
this
and
issue.
because they felt like this wasn't a problem that they needed to solve, is that?
This wasn't a problem they felt between G to G,
Okay.
rather between stock exchange and investors.
Right.
Malaysian stock exchange and Singapore investor. Oh, mums and pops, you think were up to talking
For sure,
to?
for
Yeah,
sure.
they were not up to it. And therefore, I waited by the sidelines for 9 months to see someone would put up his or her hand to represent these 172,000 stranded Singaporeans, dismayed and anguished, right? No one did.
I just want to ask, like,
the
what
reason
about
is
the government or the stock exchange?
they can't. Stock exchange did enter into an agreement with the stock exchange of Malaysia, but Malaysian government decided to put it aside.
Right.
I suspect that it's because it didn't have any dollars flowing towards Malaysia in that agreement.
Yeah.
And they said, no, it's not valid. So we have to restart again, right? But this time, people were falling prey to the Singapore businessman who was offering a discount of 52%, all right, on the value. So then I said, don't surrender, hold on. All right, there's still a lot out of 172,000 needed help, right?
Yeah.
We will organize you into an association called Securities Investors Association, SIAS, and we will be the voice. They have to deal with us.
Right.
So I gathered about 6 professional friends of mine, and we registered SIAS, and became legally recognized. But the government of Singapore did not want anything to do with us because we had to be independent.
Right.
All right. And it has to be from the ground, and it had to be between our association and Malaysia.
So this was about 9 months after the Saga first started, and because of the private sector offer, which was a
Yes.
low-ball offer, essentially,
Yes.
you
Yes.
decided to start SIAS and tell all 172,000 retail investors,
Hold your hands.
hold your hands,
Yes.
be together, because once you have people starting to accept offer,
Yes.
then everything
Well,
breaks.
we worked on the principle, old tested principle. Together we are strong. Alone we are weak.
Yeah.
All right. So we wanted to give them a strong voice and strong stand. So whatever they proposed, if we are together, they couldn't get the best of us. Right. And when people are weak and worried and confused, that's when the fellas come and prey on you.
So what happened after you started SIAS?
So
How did you resolve?
basically they said 52 cents per dollar. I said nothing doing. So all kinds of businessmen started coming to see me
All right.
from across the causeway. All right, businessmen saying that we are close to Mahathir. They will produce a letterhead with Mahathir's office letterhead, and sign that so-and-so is authorized to negotiate on behalf of the stock exchange of Malaysia. I never believed that.
What was the agenda?
The agenda was to make money out of this.
And they wanted you to go
Agree.
along with their plans.
Yes, and one of them offered a partnership with me personally, that I should become a director and shareholder of a company in Malaysia, and then this company will take over all the shares and do a close-end fund, and after 5 years, we will make a lot of money. And I said, how much money will I make? 370 million.
Oh wow,
Ringgit.
You would be
And
You
I
would
said,
be
I was
doing so well by now.
I dropped my fork and spoon. I was eating with him, and
Oh.
I said, but I don't feel like having my next lunch in Changi Prison.
I guess it didn't feel right. Or just
it is awful.
Yeah.
People are, there were divorces, there were suicides, there were bankruptcies, and you want me to make money?
So the idea, or rather the agenda, was to really get you to, since you started SIAS, to pretty much side with their agenda.
Yes.
And for you to convince, the 172,000 investors to go with your plan.
I grew up with, the era, Lee Kuan Yew era, and we are imbibed with Lee Kuan Yew's principles of, ethics, trust, and good governance. Not a chance.
Yeah.
Not a chance. So I showed him the door and said, don't come back. And there were many like that, from across the causeway. but we wouldn't move. We were on 1 cent, or 1.5 cent maximum, which the brokers would earn anyway.
Yeah.
And we had to stand firm. But they threatened to forfeit all the shares so that I will be belted by the 172,000 Singaporeans. Be my guest. They said by 31st of December 99, if you don't surrender to us, we will forfeit. And they said that was the Minister for Finance of Malaysia. And I said, you try.
So how did we resolve
So
the issue in the end?
okay, so going to Malaysian courts was not the option. And suing them was not the option, right? So we are in another court, not our courtyard. We are in another courtyard fighting in their playground. No way.
Yeah.
So what do we do? I first adopted a strategy with my colleagues that we will go to all the foreign media. From the beginning, I was being interviewed by BBC, Jonathan White, on the progress. Bloomberg, CNBC. That time it wasn't CNA, it was something else.
Yeah.
CNBC, then CNN. The whole world came to know about what Malaysia did.
Right.
You know what that means? That means confidence in the Malaysian market was dwindling further, and that was painful. So that's one way we wanted to, wake them up. This is not masa-masa, this is very serious business. Your economy is going to go down further. That's one. Number two, I discussed with the Singapore government on whether we could go to WTO.
Yeah.
Because Malaysia is a signatory to WTO, which means you must treat the foreign investors equally with local investors. So we are foreign investors.
Yeah.
You can't discriminate against us and say, I'm going to freeze your shares, you pay me money. All right, that's illegal. So we took opinion from council, and the government did, and I was advised that we have a good case. Government has a good case. So in the early part of January, we announced, we had a big gathering of 1,500 Clob investors, and I told them, they all put up their hand and said, yes, we go to WTO. Within 1 week, call came from Malaysia to LKY. We are prepared to settle on our terms.
Oh wow, that's a fast. It took a long while, but
Yeah,
that came
imagine
very
going to
quickly
court.
after.
Going to court would have taken until today. Maybe not. It wouldn't have been settled.
So how long? I think it took almost 2 years. I read in the book about 2 years for the whole
Whole
saga.
thing to be. There are two types of settlement. One was settlement in I think 6 months, 1 cent, and then the other one was 3 years.
Right.
To 1.5 cents.
1.5 cents
To transfer the shares
at that cost of 1%, 1.5%,
correct.
Right, to the Singapore
and
brokers.
which was affordable.
Right.
All right. Some counters collapsed; they were suspended, and some fell, all the way down. So, but most of it survived.
Right.
I wasn't an investor. This is the first time I bought some shares in Malaysia, and I got caught. My little money, $5,000, together with 2 other friends, we put 15,000 with the remisier, and he bought Malaysian shares. We said, we want to make money for retirement. We don't have money for retirement. Can you help us? And he put on Magnum and another palm oil stock, which was doing very well.
Right.
And we knew nothing. So why did I put up my hand? I was outraged. Firstly, that somebody could do like this to our innocent people here, small people here. Secondly, telling our political leaders, we will not talk to you, we will talk to the investors. So we had to organize the investors quickly.
Just hearing you say, it's hard to imagine this right now. I mean, but I can't.
It was scary. Yeah.
So you're talking about retirement, at that time, were you?
I was 55 years old.
And were you still practicing?
I was a consultant in a law firm.
Right.
And I was doing litigation.
So you were doing this.
Yes.
Almost as a side hustle.
No, that stopped. I had to stop that because I have cameras in my room every day.
Right. So you actually stopped.
And, interviews and then thousands of people calling my office. I had to use the law office, and the law partners were very, very, very grateful to them. They allowed me They took over my files and then freed me up to attend to this because this was a huge issue.
Okay, so for 2 years we're doing that, and I guess the next question is, after the saga was settled,
This whole thing took about 9 months.
okay, I mean, SIAS kind of like completed their initial
Yes. So what do I do next?
So what do you do next, and why the reason to continue growing SIAS?
There was a lot of speculation. Some people thought that I did this to go into politics.
Right.
Others thought that I was doing this to build up my clientele for law practice. So I had to come out with a public statement that I will do neither.
Yeah.
All right. I will not go into politics. I will not go back to practice. And what do I do then? My mind was set on building SIAS' first objective, to educate Singaporeans to invest with knowledge. Because when I went north, south, east, west of Singapore on this Clob issue, talking to Clob investors who were spread out everywhere, they had no idea why they invested in Malaysian stocks. Therefore, Clob was an eye-opener for me to say that Singapore needed an organized voice for the mums and pops.
So even though Clob was over the root of the problem, which is that, like, as an investor, you should be informed, you should be a knowledgeable investor, wasn't solved yet. Right? So
and secondly, they didn't have an organization to represent their rights. They go to annual general meetings, they are told, sit down, and they get shouted at, or they are not answered, questions are not answered. But if they were organized and they had a strong voice, companies would start looking at them differently. And indeed, that's what has happened.
Yeah. And that's where SIAS stepped in.
Yes, that's right. So from the investor education point of view, disseminating knowledge and information, and secondly, representing them on their rights so that they could stand up and fight for their rights with us backing. So last 25 years, that's what we've been doing.
Right. So over the years, I think SIAS has really established itself as an advocate for retail investors. So instead of jumping straight into confrontation, you always seem to have a preference leaning towards engagement and dialogue first. And if you ask me, I think that's one of the key reasons why you have managed to build trust with, I think almost most of the listcos in Singapore over the last, 2 decades. And I also like to think it's kind of like the Singapore way, right, where we try to work hand in hand with one another in a lot of things we do to try to achieve win-win outcome. But here's the thing, right? Even though you try to have those dialogues, it's not always smooth sailing, and I'm sure there's always challenges and times when these engagements don't happen. I just want to ask you firstly, what were the incidents that led you to realize that, hey, if I want to talk to a listco, which some of my members are sharing with me that there are some issues, that it's better to not be so confrontational and to try to organize for dialogue first.
My background is in the government legal service. I was a legal advisor at the Ministry of Labour as one of the appointments I held. And that was 74 to 76. All right. Now, in that appointment, I realized the government had a tripartite approach to resolving industrial relations issues. So we didn't have a strike because the employer, the union, and the government sat together, Commissioner for Labour, and resolved the industrial relations issues. And I was part of that. And we didn't have a strike, and companies went on, production was not disturbed, and the economy was not disrupted. And that stuck in my mind. That's one way of resolving issues successfully. In a tripartite manner. Okay, so when I started SIAS, I got feedback very often from shareholders that companies' boards at AGMs were not relenting, and therefore the tyranny of the majority shareholder votes against you.
Yeah.
You are, shouting and screaming about your, issue, and they're voting against you.
Because they can.
Yeah, they can. So the poor minority shareholders come back with tears in their eyes or no money in the pocket. Okay? So they keep complaining to me and SIAS, and I decided that there must be a way to resolve this. So I went back to my experience at Labour Ministry, MOM, and I said, we'll do the same thing here. We will involve the board, we will involve the investors, we will represent the investors and the regulators. All right? So together we started meeting with the board members, senior managers, CEOs and CFOs And we struck a chord, and we basically were welcome because we were not kicking doors, but we were knocking doors.
What happens when that approach doesn't
Yeah,
work?
so then we go public. All right, then we will send out a press statement and let the company know that we are taking it up publicly, and we may be at the AGM, or we will, which I did for Net Steel, and Net Steel learned a good lesson never to take on SIAS. All right, and we defeated them on the doubling of resolutions, and they wanted to deny payment of dividends in cash. So that was defeated by us. But then the message went, it's better to work with SIAS than against SIAS. Better to work for us to work with the board than against the board. And we have a number of issues were resolved that way in the boardroom and not the courtroom. The courtroom meaning the AGM.
Which is kind of like
So it's a
inspiration
boardroom,
behind your book.
Boardroom Knockout outlines. I mean, it captures...
Not the courtroom, the boardroom.
It captures our efforts in resolving investor relations issues.
So I think in your book as well, you did mention, however, there were some incidents over the past years, and notably Hyflux, and also the 2013 penny stock saga, where you felt like you wish more could have been done, either by the authorities or even SIAS itself. Do you feel like there is naturally, though, a limit to what SIAS can do?
Of course, we are not a regulatory body. We are voluntary organizations. We are a charity. Where we are strong is in the voice, that we are united and we provide a strong voice, understand, and we guide investors, how to take a stand. Where we find that the company is unreasonable and when it can afford to pay more in a privatization, is not willing to take out more money, then we put pressure on the company.
Yeah.
If they do not want to see us, all right, like when we wrote to Lian Bank, okay, they revised it by 10%, and there were other companies who would relent to revise slightly higher price, and it's up to the shareholders finally to decide whether they want to vote for or vote against. We point out the merits, the plus and the minus, all right, and we give guidance, but up to them. Some of them are frightened that company may not be around and they will be owning shares in a private company. So they quickly take the money, whatever is given, although it is at a loss. Lowball offers is something that we very closely follow, and try to help the investors to get more.
I mean, going through the media and then asking those questions, and that's one way. I think, do SIAS also, SIAS also employed ways to get the valuation of a company. And
yes, so we have
opinions on it
experts
as well.
who are in the committee and who are also consultants working with us on a part-time basis, and they help us on the valuation and they advise us on whether the offer is appropriate enough for shareholders to be advised that they should accept. Here we also depend on the independent financial advisors report. That's the starting point. If the guy says reasonable and not fair, fair and reasonable, so we've been actually pitching quite high on that one and saying, look, you can't say that either is reasonable and fair or unreasonable and unfair, right? That's one area we've been talking with the regulators. But when we find that it is an unfair offer, we go to the company and talk to them. But the company keeps still saying that, no, we have to stick to our offer, we can't change. Then we go public. And we only way we can reach shareholders, we don't have their emails or telephone numbers, but we send out the message through the press.
I'm not sure if this is private information or whether you can share, but on occasions where you do talk to the management about revising their offer, I can't imagine it being easy to convince the management to revise the option. How does that typically look like?
They know they have the ability to pay, and that there is a chance. The where they relent is when there is a chance that the shareholders may vote against the resolution. That SIAS is backing the investors, telling them don't vote in favor. That would be something that they want to avoid.
Right.
All right. So then they say, okay, we will come back to you. Mostly like SIA at first said, no, we will not revise a privatization of Tiger Airways.
Oh, yes.
All right. But when I wrote to the board and we pointed out the reasons why they should revise, they came back with a good revision.
I mean, those are the good outcomes where
Yes.
there's a win.
Okay, so you mentioned
But
Hyflux.
what about the win-lose?
Yes.
Yeah.
Take Hyflux, for example. The enormity of the problem in Hyflux, I mean, it wasn't an easy problem. The company has committed to energy business and they lost because suddenly it was deregulated.
Yeah.
And, they lost it and they bid very low. Now they are indebted to the bank at over $1 billion. There's a lot of money to raise. New capital to raise over $1 billion is not easy. All right. So, it was something that we were talking to the company about finding an, white knight, and they engaged a professional firm, troubleshooter firm, and they were trying to help them. But I think in the end, why it didn't succeed is I think the negotiations between the white knights broke down. There was one from Indonesia, there was, I think, one from Middle East. But in the end, they found that it was really something that they cannot manage, or they may not be able to turn around the company, So I think SIAS did what it can by continuing to engage the board and continuing to ask, but the board had to find a white knight. So that's why they failed. But one thing we found out was the retail investors were sold an instrument, perps, all right?
Preference
shares,
right.
which they didn't understand.
Right.
There wasn't sufficient information or knowledge on this.
Shall we explain just what these preference shares is? So essentially, these
It is a debt
debt instrument.
Just like you sell bonds, you sold this, and what you do, you get interest back.
Yeah.
There is no guarantee. There is no return of the money
and no maturity.
No
right?
maturity.
That's the key thing. So you get your interest,
Yes.
A fixed interest every year. And I think the idea back then for the retail investors who subscribed to the preference shares of Hyflux was that I think they probably thought it was a safe instrument.
They thought it was equity.
I thought it was equity. Okay.
Yeah, and many of them told me, they say, why is it they cannot get back my money? Why is it they're not paying me back? Why is it they're not paying? So they didn't understand. And it took me some time to understand too. So it's pity that, people are sold, products which they don't understand.
Yeah, which seems to constantly be going back to this question, which is like,
Education,
right?
Yeah.
If you're investing into something you don't understand, that's kind of where
don't invest.
Starts.
So why is it all happening? Human nature is the cause. That is greed. Greed overrides caution. It throws away caution, out of the window and say, oh, I can make so much. I recently had a case where a very highly qualified engineer saw an advertisement on the website which says, will invest with us. It's a British company. We will give you very high dividends.
Oh, that's a red flag.
And he put $250,000.
Oh,
and then they gave it dividends.
Yeah.
2 or 3 times. They said put more. He lost 1.9 million US.
Oh.
Yes, he lost that money. Because now they informed him the company has collapsed and he can't contact them. Suddenly recovery agents appear on the scene and tell him that we will recover for you. Your money is in the British Treasury. Absolute nonsense, lies, and people even highly qualified people get, scammed.
So, I mean, even if you are highly educated, whether you are investment savvy or investor education may not necessarily be there. And I think I just want to say that, besides advocating for investor rights and corporate accountability, SIAS has also taken on a crucial role in educating investors and empowering them to make informed investment decisions. I still remember how I first know about SIAS.
Okay.
And this was actually through the university,
Right.
which is the SIAS Youth Chapter. So
Yes.
SIAS actually support a lot of the investment clubs
Yes.
that are in the universities with, I think, cash support as well as access to a lot of these AGMs and events that is being organized by the market. So that's actually how I came to know through the SIAS Youth Chapter when I was in university. The financial world is increasingly becoming more and more complex.
Yes.
Not only do we have stocks to think about, you have derivatives products today, you have alternate products today, you have cryptocurrencies, you have so many
That's right.
instruments
Yes.
to invest in or that you can trade in. How do you see SIAS' role in all this?
It will increase because with AI and technology and developments in the tech side, people will be resorting to those platforms. And young investors especially have different method of investing, different approach to investments. And SIAS will therefore keep looking at the market needs and looking at what the investors want. And we will continue to cater for that order for the next generation and the future generation. So SIAS cannot be static. It got to keep moving in tandem with the developments in the marketplace and developments in the way people invest and what they need, what their needs are. All right. So that is what SIAS is doing, and we will continue to revise our methods of disseminating information and knowledge.
Yeah, one thing that I'm observing for sure these days is that a lot of the younger investors, when they start their investment journey, they're no longer starting in Singapore, right? So a lot of them are captured by the headlines you see out there about some of the US stocks that, are giving them, double-digit growth, or sometimes, you can quadruple, double your money in a year or two.
Yes.
And SIAS is primarily, when you started, you were primarily engaging with Singapore-listed companies and Singapore-based investors. But what happens when the Singapore-based investors are not necessarily starting their investment journey in Singapore?
So we are not experts in US stocks or overseas stocks, but our experts here do discuss market trends, how the US markets are performing, which is a knowledge necessary for those who are entering foreign markets. However, we must caution Singapore investors when they enter into a foreign market, they are on their own, all right? And anything goes wrong, they have to engage lawyers, and lawyers are very, very expensive, all right? So that's the biggest risk that Singapore investors face overseas. Anything that pays you more than your dream levels will have risks. So you make money, good money, yes, but you also must remember there have been very serious scams in America and other places. Yeah. All right, there have been collapses as well. So who helps you? SIAS cannot, because we are a Singapore organization. However, we can disseminate knowledge here about the market and maybe some of the leading stocks. They can attend our investor educational program. Experts every Monday they do discuss on the internet. So your question is, can SIAS do the same thing for them that we do in Singapore? Limited way.
I think from an investor education, that's where it has to be, right? Because when, like what you say, when you are investing in overseas market, you are kind of like on your own. You have to understand what is it that you're doing.
Sure.
And you cannot assume that, overseas markets are going to be regulated the same way as you are used to in Singapore. And I think naturally there is surely a limit to what SIAS can do, especially when, people
outside Singapore. Yes.
Have you ever thought about within Singapore looking at, because I think robo-advisory products are also another way where a lot of young people are starting their investment journey, as well as people around my age. So it's not necessarily just in stocks or listed products. It could even be, things like robo-portfolio. Ever thought of, whether this could be
our
something?
investor education trainers, they do talk about this and they're aware of it. I think this is one area which is expanding very fast. And our experts are saying that we need to cater for that. And not that easy. Not that easy, but they have to be involved.
Over the past few years, there have been, financial products by some of your fintech firms that have not continued. It could be in terms of loans, it could be in equities, even alternate products like cryptocurrencies. And I can imagine, there have been some fallouts from this.
Yes. It has to be contemporaneous. As the market develops, as the products develop, SIAS also has to develop knowledge, needs to have experts to be ready to help investors who are investing in products that are the result of robo-advisory services. So it is. You're right. I mean, we have to be contemporaneously relevant.
Yeah. I mean, you have spent 25 years at SIAS, being the advocate for minority shareholders' interests in Singapore. How do you see the next 25 years going for SIAS?
Yeah, I think if you are prepared to be progressive and in tandem with the market needs, investors' needs, you will survive. And if you're going to be doing the same thing as we're doing now, next year, the year after, people will leave you behind.
Right.
And you'll be isolated, and irrelevant. You'll be just discarded, right? But why do we exist? We exist because our constitution requires that we serve the needs of investors in terms of education, in terms of protection, and also that we should be involved in checking company governance.
Right.
All right, these three. So in the corporate governance area and sustainability and ESG, we are stepping up. We have always been doing governance and rating companies and giving them awards, right? But now we are also looking at ESG very seriously, getting involved with the ESG segment.
Right. So looking at companies and their, ESG initiatives, and also helping investors to understand what these ESG ratings may mean.
I mean, basically, green investing is coming up. Greenwashing is something that they need to look out. Do they really do what they say they're doing, right? And I think young investors are very into it.
Correct.
They are interested in sustainability. They're interested in, the environment, all right? Unlike the West, it may be lesser in terms of focus. People are not yet focusing on much on this, but there has to be education in that area, in those areas too. And we need to step up.
I guess the point you're saying is that, as the financial markets develops in terms of its products, as well as in terms of what investors are looking out for, SIAS should and want to continue.
We'll be hand in hand with, in that situation, and must not be left behind. Otherwise, we will not be relevant.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Gerald, and for not only sharing with us SIAS' journey over the past 25 years, but also your plans and hope for how SIAS will evolve in the next 25 years. And for those of you who are turning into this episode on SIAS, on the Heritage Series that we have, if you're curious to dive deeper into the SIAS stories, you can check out this newly launched book, Boardroom Knockout. It was launched last year. Where can they get it from?
Oh, they can get it from any of the major
popular
bookstores. Yeah, all Nutcraft publishers.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So go get this book if you are interested to know some of the topics we talk about, some of the sagas in the past 20 years that have helped define not just what SIAS have done, but also the Singapore stock market in general. Check out this book. You have a lot of fascinating stories in there as well. And of course, if you enjoy this episode, don't forget to hit our like button, subscribe to our podcast on the DollarsAndSense channel, whether you are watching this or listening to this. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.